So as you all know, Purim is coming up this coming Monday night and Tuesday. And Purim really signifies the theme of the entire month. This month, the month of Adar, is a month of happiness. In fact, the Talmud says, Mishanichnas Adar marbim besimcha. One should increase in happiness, which really relates to the idea that you should always be happy. Just in Adar, you have to increase that happiness. So you should always have your status, your default status should be happiness. Now you increase in happiness during this month of Adar. Adar is also a month, as it says here, in which our luck, our fortune, our mazel is healthy. Barei mazale, the Talmud says, that the mazel of this month is a healthy one. And that's why, if God forbid one needs a surgery, you should do it during this month, if you can postpone it. If one has a court case, one should have it during this month. Anything in which you need extra luck, try to plan that thing for this month, anytime during this month, because our luck is enhanced during this month. And we see that certainly in the story of Purim, and we see that in history, that this was a month in which many miracles happened. Hopefully, maybe a month in which the Iranian regime will also fall. We'll see, but our luck is enhanced in this month, and it's a good month, a month of happiness in general. In addition to that, I will say something that the Kabbalists point out, and that is that the month of Adar is called Adar because of the two Hebrew words that can be found in this month. You have, on the one hand, Aleph. Adar is spelled Aleph, Dalet, Resh. Aleph is one word, Dalet, Resh is another word. Aleph stands for God. Aleph has a numerical value of 1, and God is the ultimate oneness. We say Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad in the Shema, that God is one. So Aleph stands for God. Dar in Hebrew means to dwell, like the word for apartment, for a home, dira, ladur. Aleph, Dar, the Kabbalists point out that during this month, Adar, Aleph, Dar, God dwells in this month more than he perhaps dwells in other months. That's why the mazel is enhanced and so on. That's why we should be more happy. Really, it's a month of tremendous divine revelation. God dwells in this month, Aleph Dar. Now, of course, at the climax of this month is the story of Purim, which we all know, in which there was an evil advisor to the king, Haman. We have parallels of Haman today too, but wanted to exterminate the Jewish people. He wanted to exercise the final solution, as many of our enemies wanted to do. And Queen Esther, with the advice of her uncle Mordecai, who was really the leader of the Jewish people at the time, 2,800 years ago, he advised Queen Esther infiltrated the palace. She became the queen, and she was able to convince the king not to listen to his advisor, and therefore not to exercise this final solution. And leYehudim ayta ora v'simcha v'zason v'ikar, as the Megillah says, then the Jews had light, happiness, glory, and their mazel was transformed in this month. V'nahafochu, as the Megillah also says, we went from being the persecuted, the nation that was about to be exterminated, to a nation with the highest ranks in the kingdom of Achashverosh, a nation that was respected and celebrated, to the point that tens of thousands of non-Jews, after this victory over Haman, converted. Everyone wanted to join the Jewish people. The Megillah itself says, "V'rabim me'amei haaretz mityahadim," that many of the nations of the world, mityahadim, from the word Yehudi, became Jewish. And we were the thing. From being the nothing, we became the thing. So that's what this month altogether, not just the story of Purim, represents. But I want to draw 3 major lessons from the story of Purim and from this month, lessons that should be relevant today, perhaps more than ever. Lesson number 1 goes to the custom of Purim, and I hope, by the way, you'll all come here on Monday night. We have a big celebration. Megillah reading will take place at 7 p.m., and then a whole party. Please join us, but I also hope you come dressed up. That's one of the many customs of Purim, to dress up. Why do we dress up on Purim? Why? That's the question, right? So let's give the answer year of Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, 1965. Does anyone want to read? Why do we disguise ourselves on Purim? Anyone? Anyone want to read? Go for it, Mindy. Go for it. Because Mhm. Achashverosh was the ruling king of 127 countries, right? Did he choose? Achashverosh. Yeah. Right. So that's one of the main lessons. And this is why we dress up, because even though there's an expression in English that says seeing is believing, while in Purim we say seeing is not believing. What you see is not what there is. There is so much more to the story than what you see. They say that coincidence is God's name for anonymous. But there is no such thing as coincidence. It's just God appearing anonymously, as the story of Purim portrays. If you know the story, you know what every one of these questions relate to. But everything in the story of Purim seems like a coincidence. For example, was it a coincidence that, like we just said, that Achashverosh all of a sudden changed his mind? Was it a coincidence that Vashti was expelled from the kingdom, that evil queen who was also evil towards the Jewish people? Were all those stories a coincidence? No, it was God acting as the chief conductor just behind the scenes. This is also why we can't find God's name in the entire Megillah. If you look at the Megillah, test me, you'll see. God's name can't be found in the story of the Megillah, because God is trying to teach us that what we see, we shouldn't believe. Seeing is not believing. We should use maybe a vision, not our eyesight, to put it in a different way, when we look at life around us, or even when we look at people, or when we look at ourselves. There is so much more. There is a divine act that is really in charge of everything. Outside, I once saw a picture, and maybe I'll share it with you so you can share it with the whole group. But I once saw a picture that came from Cologne, Germany. Cologne, Germany is a place where atrocities happened during the Holocaust, but Jews tried to hide in a cellar in Cologne, Germany, and they were eventually found, and they were tortured to death. But while they were hiding in that cellar, one of them wrote an inscription on the wall that's still there. And the inscription says something like this: I believe in love, even though I may not feel it. I believe in the sun, even though it may not be shining. And I believe in God, even though he may be silent. Just imagine someone going through the Holocaust, suffering beyond our wildest imagination, can still use his vision and not his sight to really connect to the God that is behind the silence, behind the scenes. In many ways, that's what Purim teaches us. Yes, we may be going through challenges, each in our own way, just like the Jewish people did. Yes, we don't know what will happen with Iran. Global challenges also still happening, very similar to what happened 2,800 years ago. But we have to have trust in the God that is orchestrating everything from behind the silence, from behind the scenes. That's why we dress up on Purim, to tell people, hey, you think, nah, I'm a clown? I'm not. There's a human being behind this. You think I'm a queen? No, there's a human being behind this. You think whatever you are portraying yourself to be, that's not who you are. Same here with Purim. This is also why it's interesting, because we could have named this festival many names, with many names that I'm sure many of you can come up with, right? We could have used the word miracle to name this festival, right? The miracle of Purim, call it, or the miracle of Esther, or you could have used the name of, complete transformation, if you want to be creative, and like we were speaking about. But the name that was chosen is the name Purim. Purim in Hebrew means lottery. It comes from the word pur. Now, it refers to the lottery that Haman orchestrated in order to know exactly when he should exterminate the Jewish people, when he should carry out that decree. He didn't know exactly what date should I choose, so he threw a dice, and it fell on the 13th of Adar. Now, based on this, we name this festival Purim. What? You're going to name a festival that represents a tremendous miracle, represents happiness, represents a transformation, represents salvation. You're going to name a festival like that after the lottery that the Adolf Hitler of the day did? Like, why? Why name it Purim? Why? But it shares the same idea. Let's read what the Talmud itself says about the word Purim. Does anyone want to read? The very name Purim. Daniela, per favore. Go for it. Mm-hmm. Right. Sometimes, again, we don't know why things are happening, why God gave us this card in this lottery of life. But there's a reason why. Sometimes we don't see it immediately, but most often we can see it going in hindsight. There's a God that's orchestrating, that's the chief conductor of this world symphony. I'll share with you a story I've shared before in the past, but it's truly a lovely story that a friend of mine shared with me. His name is Oren Antebi. He lives in Toronto, and he said that a few years ago, he had the local yeshiva boys over for a big barbecue and a kumsitz, where they all get together and they sing songs, so, of a bonfire. And everyone was happy, and it was going late into the night, and really, everyone was just on a high, except for one person. Who? Who? His wife. His wife was so anxious because she thought that the neighbors are going to hate them. They're making so much noise. And how can we do this? Anyway, the next day, she's in the kitchen in the morning, and the phone rings. And she thinks that's it. It's the neighbor calling to complain. So she picks up. And it is the neighbor. And before the neighbor speaks up, she tells her neighbor, I know why you're calling. I'm so sorry. We'll never do this again. There was a lot of noise. We couldn't stop these boys. Promise you we won't do it. The neighbor says, no, that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling to do the opposite. I'm calling to thank you. Thank me? Thank me for the noise? Yeah, I'm calling to thank you for the noise. Why? She said, look, you don't understand, but yesterday was my mother's yahrzeit. And I went to sleep in a very somber state. And I said to myself that, I need a sign that my mother is still with me. So I opened the window to catch a breath of fresh air. And I hear these boys from your backyard singing all these songs. And some of these songs were songs that my mother would sing to me when I was a child. So I'm really calling to thank you because you gave me such comfort on such a somber day. And I knew that thanks to you and the boys that were with you, my mother is still with me. And I'm thinking of the story because isn't that the story of life? Sometimes with our narrow eyesight, not vision, but narrow eyesight, we think, gosh, this is terrible. What's going to come out of this? Nothing good is going to come out of it. But really, there's a master conductor that has a master plan. And that's orchestrating things that are way beyond our eyesight, way beyond what our imagination can grasp. And that's the story of Purim. What we see is not what we get. Seeing is not believing. There's so much more. And if we can just trust that God, then we can truly be happy. Then Adar, then God, the Aleph, can really dwell even in our challenges. Yes, Janet, go for it.
Personal insight here to that part, what you were just saying. So as the Hebrew calendar's days change, so my husband's yahrzeit is the English yahrzeit is March 15th. And it's always
right. Always change. Do you know the Hebrew date?
Well, this year I do.
Okay, good. Yeah.
This year it falls on the evening before my daughter's getting married.
Wow.
And
You
it's
see?
just wild.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow. That's beautiful.
It's like,
See?
her dad's at her wedding.
That's it. Oh, wow. That's so beautiful.
Never come that close.
Right. There you go. Because of the Hebrew day is not always on the same English day. Yeah.
Weeks before.
Right. Depends. If it's a leap year, it could be weeks. Yeah. This year, did you hear this? It falls. That's so beautiful.
He's getting married still.
Right.
See? Which was just like, it's just.
Yeah, that's it.
The boy sings.
Within the somberness, there's God's hand. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Really beautiful. Okay, so that's lesson 1. Lesson 2 really speaks to the question of why is it that the Megillah begins with describing the tremendous feasts and festivities that King Achashverosh had to celebrate his ruling over 127 countries. If you read the Megillah, certainly the first few chapters, you'll see that there's unnecessary descriptions of his richness, of his parading in the streets, of his feast, of what food was served, on what cloths was the food served, the cloths that covered the tables. Why do we need to know all this? It would save us some time also, by the way. The reading of the Megillah is about 40 minutes. We could do it in 20 minutes, if not for all of these descriptions. Why? Why all these descriptions? Just to give you a taste of those descriptions, let's read here Esther 1:6-7. Does anyone want to read? There was spreads of. Go for it, Mindy. Go for it. There was spreads of.
Silver, marble, gold and silver, and a pavement of green, white, shell, and onyx marbles. And they gave this prince golden vessels, and the vessels differed from one another, and royal wine was plentiful according to the bounty of the king.
Right. Who cares? It doesn't have anything to do with the story also. The story is that God saved us from Haman. What does this have to do with anything? Why even begin the Megillah there? To the point that, by the way, you know that one of the 4 mitzvahs of Purim is to be able to listen to the Megillah. To listen to the Megillah both at night and also during the day. By the way, during the day on Tuesday, we'll have multiple readings so that you can come at the time that's most convenient to you. One during the morning service at about 7:30. But then we'll have another reading at 9 a.m., at 10 a.m., on 1 in the afternoon. I don't remember exactly what time. But the mitzvah of listening to the Megillah is to listen to every word, better, to every letter. If you did not listen to a letter, then you may have to listen to it all over again. Why should I listen to these letters? This has nothing to do, again, with the story of Purim. But the answer, I think, is very, very powerful. And it speaks to the way we can really achieve happiness, connection with God, Adar, but most importantly, the way we should live all together. Does anyone want to read? This is a very powerful answer. When King Achashverosh throws a party, anyone? Okay, go for it.
Now, this king's motives were far from holy, but the Torah is telling us a story to teach us an invaluable lesson.
Yeah, continue. Even.
You ought not to live a life of quiet desperation. Do not settle for smallness. Life falls on us to live it to the fullest. If even the Persian dictator understood this, how much more do we, God's people, need to understand this? Do not settle for smallness. Live life well. Utilize every potential, every resource, every opportunity, every bounty, and every talent. Show up to life into love with every fiber of your being, holding nothing back. Dance to end of love. Celebrate to the heavens. Flex all your spiritual and emotional needs.
Right, and this is the reason why. If you want to live like a king, and we are all kings and queens, we are called that in the Torah, kingdom of priests, kingdom. So we have to live all the way. We have to be present fully. We have to give it our all. You know, one of the great teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, is that a soul comes down here to this world. Some souls come down to this world for 70, 80 years, that's how he puts it, just to do a favor to someone else. I may be living now 80 years just for one reason, to do a favor to someone else. Now, the wisdom in this teaching is that I don't know that someone else is. I don't know what favor. And therefore, I should treat every someone else and every favor as the reason for which I came down to this world. And if I don't go all the way with that favor to that person, maybe I missed the whole mission for which my soul was sent to this world. Imagine, this is what he says. So every moment has to be treated as if this was the moment for which I was sent to this world. Now, I think it's tremendously relevant, but especially nowadays. This phone here, for example, this little machine, or this little machine here, I think is the greatest distraction to that. We're always running to the next thing. We always have another phone call, another text to answer to, that we can never be present. And here, Achashverosh and the Megillah itself teaches us, if you want to be kings, go all the way. Stop being distracted, stop being pulled, and not giving your all. I want to read for you a poem. It was written by this Brazilian poet, Paulo, what's his name? Paulo? That's right, yeah. But what's his last name? Coelho, thank you. Yeah. And he wrote a poem about as if he was a child writing to his parents. Maybe he himself wrote it to his parents. And this is really most beautiful, but it also teaches us how to show up, not just for every person, but most importantly for our children, for our own. The poem is called When You Thought I Wasn't Looking. And it goes like this. If you want, I'll share it with you, and you can share it with everybody else. When you thought I wasn't looking, you hung my first painting on the refrigerator, and I wanted to paint another one. When you thought I wasn't looking, you fed a stray cat, and I thought it was good to be kind to animals. When you thought I wasn't looking, you baked a birthday cake just for me, and I knew that little things were special things. When you thought I wasn't looking, you said a prayer, and I believed that there was a God that I could always talk to. When you thought I wasn't looking, you kissed me goodnight, and I felt loved. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw tears come from your eyes, and I learned that sometimes things hurt, but that it's all right to cry. When you thought I wasn't looking, I looked at you and wanted to say, thanks for all the things I saw when you thought I wasn't looking. And I think it's such a powerful poem because, we sometimes excuse our behavior, our not showing up, because we say no one's looking anyway. Who cares anyway? It's not true. Our children look at us all the time. People that look up at us look at us all the time. And even if there's no one around us, God is looking at us all the time. And when we show up like these parents did, whether it's for a birthday cake or to hang a painting on a refrigerator, it makes an impact. It takes a moment and turns it into a lasting one that will last in the memories and in the deeds even of those that we inspire. So King Achashverosh teaches us to show up. And when we do, then we become kings, and that royalty has a ripple effect that we can't even see. So that's the reason, and that's lesson number 2. Let's go to lesson number 3, because lesson number 3 speaks of something quite similar, but it also shares my favorite verse in the entire Bible, in the entire Tanakh, and it comes from the story of Purim. Just to give you the context, and then we can read the verse. The context is that it was made known that Haman wants to kill the Jewish people. The Jews now are fasting for 3 days to ask God, and by the way, this is why we'll fast also on Monday. Monday is the fast of Esther, to commemorate the fast of the Jewish people when they heard that this terrible decree has befallen them. They don't know how they're going to change it, how they're going to annul it. So they're fasting. They're saying, God, you're the only one that can help us. And they're fasting for 3 days. When they are fasting, Mordechai decides to go to his niece, Queen Esther, become the queen. And he says to her, look, we're doing our best. Jewish people now, all they can do is pray, but you can do something else too. You're the queen. So I'm going to ask you, go to the king and try to convince him to annul this decree of his evil advisor. Esther gives an excuse, a good one. And she says to her uncle, Mordechai, I'm sorry, but I can't just go to the king because I wasn't invited. The policy is that if you're not invited to the king and you walk into his room, he kills you. because only those who are invited are allowed to come. And that includes me. Even though I'm the queen, I'll be killed. So she refuses. So Mordechai now goes back and says to her, look, you'll either go or you won't go. If you don't go, that's fine. God will provide his redemption through other channels. God has many channels. And you and your house will perish. If you do go, you'll be the carrier of that blessing of salvation, and you will be made an eternal hero for the Jewish people. So it's going to happen either way. The question is if you're going to show up to the plate and actually deliver that salvation, be the carrier of the blessing. Let's read the verse within. Esther chapter 4. Does anyone want to read this? Mordecai ordered to reply to Esther when she refused, right? Let's see. Did not imagine. Janet, go for it.
And Mordecai, do not imagine to yourself that you will escape in the king's house from among all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, a relief and rescue will arise for the Jews from elsewhere, and you and your father's household will perish. And who knows whether it was not for this moment that attained the kingdom.
Right. Maybe God made you queen just for this moment, for you to be the carrier of this blessing of salvation that is coming to the people. So if you don't, that's fine. If you refuse, that's fine. You'll perish. If not, and if not, God will find someone else. If yes, then you'll make your eternal impact on the history of the Jewish people. Why is this such a powerful verse? Because it really teaches us maybe the most important lesson of these three. And that is that after all, life is not about asking what I want from it. It is about asking what it wants from me. Very often we have our plan, whether it's massive plans like I want to be a doctor, I want to be an accountant, I want to be a lawyer, or I want to have this type of life, I want to live in this place. But God has different plans sometimes. God says, no, I don't think it's good for you to be that accountant that you think you should be. I don't think it's good for you to live this in Scarsdale, New York. I don't think it's good for you to go and follow this dream or that aspiration. I have other plans for you. And then God tries to guide us in different directions. Now, one or two things can happen. We can act like the initial Esther, or we can act like Queen Esther. The initial Esther says, sorry, God, thank you, but I'm going to continue with my plans. And that only invites frustration, and maybe even ultimately those plans perish, like Mordecai tells Esther. Or we can say, you know what? Life is not about what I want from it. It's about what it wants from me. Let me be a carrier to that blessing. Yes, it wasn't in my plans, but I'm still going to allow God to guide me, even though my plans are conflicting with his. And I do go to that place, and I do this. And I do say yes, even though I'm lazy. And I do heed the call, even though I think that I should be heeding a completely different call, my call. And when we do that, then we discover magic. Then we discover redemption, salvation. Then not only do we not perish, God forbid, but then our names too are written in eternal alleys and avenues of history. This is what Queen Esther teaches us. And I want to bring to your attention something that I discovered not long ago, but it's interesting. There's a term for this in science. It's called multiple discoveries. But apparently, and it's true if you think about this, all of the inventions of history were carried out by more than one person. For example, give an example. The telephone was created, it's my favorite example. The telephone was created by, right, that's what we think. But do you know that while Alexander Graham Bell was creating this invention of the telephone, someone else was creating it? Do you know who? No, a guy named Elisha Gray. Elisha Gray, no one has heard of Elisha Gray. But he was here living in America, inventing the exact same invention, the telephone. And the only reason we remember Alexander Graham Bell and not Elisha Gray is because Alexander Graham Bell came to the patent office in Washington, D.C. on the 14th of February, 1876, 3 hours before Elisha Gray did. 3 hours before Elisha. Now, you may ask yourself, what did Elisha Gray do that morning? I don't know. Maybe he hit the snooze button when he needed to wake up. Maybe he had an extra long breakfast. Maybe he was reading the newspaper and he was just falling in love with every word there. I don't know. One thing I do know He said he didn't heed the call. God's call to him was, go. You did this invention now. Go to the patent office. But he didn't. He didn't have that burning within him. He had his plan. He needed his omelet. He needed his coffee. He needed his news. I don't know what he was doing. But he wasn't heeding the call. And because he missed it by 3 hours, today we remember the invention of the telephone after Alexander Graham Bell and not after Elisha Gray. But what this also tells me is that when God decides to send a blessing to the world, the blessing is sent to this world. The question is, who will be selfless? Who will be like Queen Esther? Who will heed God's call, not his selfish call, in order to carry that blessing forward? And it's true. Think about this. The revolution of the internet came about by multiple people because God decided to send that blessing to our generation. So Steve Jobs came about, and Bill Gates came about, and you name all these inventors. It's true for almost every year. You have a list right here in front of you of all sorts of inventions that were sent to this world by God, and it was those that were most heeding to God's call that have the inventions named after them, not the people who were maybe too lazy or too selfish or too immersed with their own selfish call to be able to listen to God's call for them. Let's read some of the examples. Calculus was conceptualized, does anyone want to read this, in the 17th century by, come on, anyone? Please, go for it, yeah. Leibniz, yeah. Tycho Osinski, yeah, exactly, of Poland.
And they did not got his work. The vaccine for polio was formulated in the 1950s by 3 independent individuals: Hillary Kaczmarski, Jonas Salk, and Albert Sabin. And most recently, the 2011 Nobel in Physics was awarded to Saul Perlmutter, Adam Rees, and Brian Schmidt for independently discovering that the extension of the universe is solid.
Right. So it's fascinating because these inventions were discovered independently, right, by different individuals, unbeknownst to each other. It's quite amazing. Think about this. I mean, God sent this blessing, but they heed the call. They said, all right, let's be the carriers of this blessing. And those that were most enthusiastic about it, had the most alacrity, were the ones who the inventions were named after. This is also why Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, says ultimately man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather he must recognize that it is he who is asked. And to life, he can only respond by being responsible. What is responsible? Responsibility is really a combination of 2 words. Think about this. Response, ability. It's about being able to respond, not being able to execute your own plans, but being able to respond to the plans that God has for you. Will you say yes or will you say no? And this is what Mordecai is communicating with Esther. Are you going to say yes? If you say no, that's fine. You'll perish. But if you say yes, then you'll heed the call. You'll fulfill the mission for which you were made queen, and your name will be engraved in the annals of Jewish history. And this is really what life is all about. So just to summarize, Adar not only teaches us that this is the month with the greatest mazel, and a month in which God, Aleph, Dar, God dwells, as we said, a month therefore in which we should be happy, but it also teaches us that there is so much more to that which the eye sees. It also teaches us that we have to show up to every moment of life, and most importantly, be responsible to develop an ability to respond so that we can heed God's call, even though it may not always be so convenient. And in that way, we too will be Queen Esthers in our own rights.